Ideas are easy. Execution is everything. It's a really bold statement, but think about it for a second. Brilliant ideas are practically worthless if you don't have a flawless execution strategy to actually back them up. How many incredible products or world-changing initiatives have totally fizzled out simply because the team couldn't align and execute? Welcome to our explainer of John Doerr's landmark book, Measure What Matters. Today, we're unpacking the exact execution framework that propelled companies like Intel and Google from ambitious little startups to the legendary industry titans we know today. We're diving deep into the world of objectives and key results, or as you probably know them, OKRs. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the execution gap, break down the anatomy of an OKR, explore the 4 OKR superpowers, look at upgrading to continuous feedback, and finally, discover exactly why culture eats strategy. Let's jump right in. Section 1, the execution gap. Historically, corporate management was a bit chaotic, right? It relied heavily on vague goals and top-down directives. But leaders like Andy Grove and John Doerr realized that organizations needed a rigorous system to bridge that massive gap between knowing what to do and actually getting 1,000 different people to do it together. So their solution is actually elegantly simple. On the left, we have the objective. This is exactly what you want to achieve. It needs to be significant, action-oriented, and highly inspirational. It's the destination. On the right, we have the key result. This is how you measure your success in getting there. Key results must be specific, time-bound, and most importantly, numerical. As the saying goes over at Google, it's not a key result unless it has a number. Section 2, Anatomy of an OKR. This incredibly simple structure acts as a true weapon for leaders. It transforms a vague, pie-in-the-sky idea into tracked, rigorous execution. It is literally the ultimate antidote to fuzzy thinking, grounding an inspirational objective in concrete, measurable reality. Now, to truly understand how this framework functions out in the wild, we need to look at what Doerr identifies as the 4 superpowers of OKRs. They are focus, align, track, and stretch. We're going to explore each of these superpowers to understand exactly how they supercharge an organization's output. Section 3, the 4 OKR superpowers. Let's unpack these, starting with the very first superpower, focus. Because let's be real, in a world of endless distraction, prioritizing everything means you're prioritizing nothing. Let's anchor this concept of focus with a legendary story, Intel's Operation Crush. Back in 1980, Intel faced an absolute existential threat from Motorola. Motorola's microprocessors were faster, they were easier to program, and Intel was losing market share incredibly fast. CEO Andy Grove didn't panic and issue 50 different defensive initiatives. Nope. Instead, he focused the entire company on a single, highly urgent OKR to simply crush Motorola. By narrowing their priorities and aligning every single department, from engineering all the way to sales and marketing around this one hyper-focused goal, they moved with incredible urgency, recaptured the 16-bit market, and honestly, saved the company. Our second superpower is align. Just look at the difference between the traditional method and the agile OKR approach. Traditional top-down goal cascading is, frankly, incredibly slow. It creates departmental silos, marginalizes your frontline contributors, and causes a massive loss of agility. Transparent OKR alignment, on the other hand, changes the game entirely. Everyone's goals are completely public, from the CEO all the way down to the newest hire. This encourages bottom-up goal setting and cross-functional collaboration, which allows employees to see exactly how their daily work connects to the company's ultimate vision. Our third superpower is tracking. OKRs are dynamic, living entities. They are absolutely not a set-it-and-forget-it New Year's resolution. To track effectively, you need cloud-based visibility so everyone can see progress in real time. You need to designate OKR shepherds to ensure compliance and accountability. And importantly, teams have to conduct weekly check-ins to score and adjust their key results. Because hey, if a strategy isn't working mid-cycle, you don't wait for a quarterly review, you pivot immediately. And that brings us to the 4th superpower, stretch. Take a look at this massive number right here, 1 billion. This wasn't a typo. This was YouTube's wildly ambitious objective. By 2012, YouTube was already successful, but to maintain their dominance, they needed a massive leap forward. So they set a goal to reach 1 billion hours of daily watch time by 2016. Now, you might be wondering, why set a target that seems mathematically impossible? Because a stretch OKR pushes organizations far beyond their comfort zones. CEO Susan Wojcicki knew that to hit 1 billion hours, they couldn't just rely on minor, safe iterations. They had to shift their primary metric from views to watch time to truly prioritize user satisfaction, and they literally had to completely rethink their algorithms and platform infrastructure. This seemingly impossible stretch OKR totally invigorated the company, demanded radical innovation, and ultimately drove the massive growth that reshaped global media consumption. Section 4, upgrading to continuous feedback. Look, setting goals is really only half the battle. Managing the people achieving them is just as critical, and the traditional annual review is completely outdated for the modern agile workplace. We desperately need an upgrade. The traditional annual review is backward-looking, lengthy, heavily focused on rigid numerical ratings, and frankly, it's usually pretty demoralizing for the employee. John Doerr's solution is CFRs, which stands for Conversations, Feedback, and Recognition. CFRs are continuous, bidirectional, and actually empowering. They separate compensation discussions from performance evaluations, focusing purely on ongoing development and real-time coaching. If you want proof of how powerful this is, just look at Adobe. They realized they were wasting an absolutely staggering 80,000 hours a year on a performance review process that their employees hated. So they completely ditched it. They introduced a check-in model based on CFRs, eliminating rankings and ratings entirely. By replacing formal evaluations with continuous constructive feedback, Adobe created a much more engaged workforce and saw a drastic reduction in voluntary attrition. Turns out, people want to grow, not just be graded. Section 5, Culture Eats Strategy. Okay, here is the crucial plot twist of this entire explainer. You can have the most perfect OKRs and CFRs in the world, but the system will reject them like a bad organ transplant if your culture isn't healthy. So, what does a healthy culture actually look like? Well, Google conducted an exhaustive internal study called Project Aristotle and identified these 5 foundational needs for high-performing teams. You need structure and clarity, absolutely. But look at number 2, psychological safety. If your employees do not feel psychologically safe to take risks, to admit failures openly, or to challenge leadership, they are never going to commit to those ambitious stretch goals we talked about earlier. They will just play it safe to protect themselves. As John Doerr emphasizes, without a foundational culture of radical transparency and support, your OKRs will fail. Period. We see this in the source material with the healthcare tech firm Lumeris. They had to undergo a massive cultural overhaul, embracing what they called brutal transparency without judgment, before their OKRs finally took root. Or look at Bono's One campaign. They used OKRs combined with a culture of factivism to align passionate activists with highly analytical, measurable goals to fight poverty. Ultimately, the culture is what gives the numbers their meaning. But, we always need to look at these things critically. OKRs are powerful, for sure, but they aren't a flawless silver bullet for every single scenario. Rigid OKRs can sometimes stifle flexibility in highly fluid or highly creative environments, where discovery is actually more important than a predefined numerical result. Furthermore, if they're misapplied or driven by a toxic, high-pressure culture, they can lead to goals gone wild, where teens cut corners, act unethically, or just completely lose sight of the bigger picture just to hit a key result. Proper implementation requires careful, culturally aligned nuance. Bringing us to our conclusion, the ultimate execution. We've seen how OKRs provide the focus, the transparent alignment, the dynamic tracking, and the ambitious stretch. We've seen how CFRs provide the continuous, human-centric feedback and recognition. And we've learned how a healthy, psychologically safe culture provides the necessary foundation for it all to actually work. Together, they form a unified philosophy of transformational execution. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to challenge how you operate starting today. If you strip away all the distractions and the vague aspirations, what is your ultimate stretch objective? And exactly how are you going to measure your success in getting there? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structure empowers you, and I hope you're ready to start executing on what truly matters.